In the last module, the focus was on pricing. We talked about price competition and how pure price competition can lead to uh, zero profit. Basically, they'll just price each other all the way down, undercutting each other. And then we talked about price discrimination and other forms of pricing. In this module, the focus is going to be on if companies are selling multiple goods, multiple different types of goods, how they can possibly combine those goods into a package, whether it's through a tying relationship, which is what this video will focus on, or a bundling relationship, which is what a different video within this module will focus on in terms of a real world example of each, how they're used, how they work, why someone would want to do that, those sorts of things. So when we talk tying, we're talking about conditioning the sale of one good on the sale of another good moving forward. So oftentimes it's you buy or lease. So a lot of times this is done in an office setting. You buy or lease, say, a copy machine, and conditional on the purchase or lease of that copy machine, you agree to buy maybe your toner, your ink, your paper, those sorts of things from the same company. Sometimes car dealerships will tie the sale of a good onto future, using them for service, something like that. But anytime you have buying one good then obligates you to use that seller for some other related good going forward, that is a tying relationship. Most of the time, if you look at tying, you think of it as basically price discrimination. It's not too dissimilar from what we were talking about in the last module with price discrimination. If you think of like the two-part pricing model that we did at the bar, where you charge a cover charge to get in and then a per drink charge once you're in, it's not too dissimilar. A tying relationship where you charge one fee at one point and then you charge fees again later. So, but in this example, it'd be like, you charge a fee for a printer or copy machine that only takes ink cartridges from that company, and then that obligates you to buy the ink from them going forward. However, this term up here, predation. So when we get to the module on entry and exit, we'll talk about predatory pricing. But here we're talking about sort of predatory conduct in a different manner. So let's walk through an example of how this type of tying relationship could potentially be highly anti-competitive and potentially illegal, depending on the specifics of the example. So here's the example I want to use. Alcatraz in the San Francisco Bay Area, right in the bay there. It's run by the National Park Service at this point, and it's operated as sort of a historic site, a tourist attraction. You can go out, you can tour it, you can go look at the cells where people were kept, those sorts of things. But they really limit the number of people they allow out there. So when the Park Service was trying to figure out how to deal with this site, they decided that they would outsource at least the transportation component, not so much the tour component, but the transportation component, they would outsource to another company that operated boat tours within the Bay Area. Okay, so what the National Park Service did, they issued 4,800 tickets daily. That's what they wanted to keep the capacity on the island to just 4,200 per day to preserve the site. And they gave these tickets to Blue and Gold Fleet Cruise Lines out of the Bay Area, and they were the only tour boat company that was allowed to transport tourists to the island. They could, if they chose, sell 1,800 of the 4,200 tickets to travel agents and others who are putting things together. So the majority of the tickets needed to be tourists in San Francisco, could be locals in San Francisco, but people that go directly to the cruise line and want to go see Alcatraz. But they also were allowed to give some tickets, allow travel agents to put them into sort of vacation packages for their clients. Because there was such demand for the tickets, the operators that, and when we say operators, we're talking, the travel agents, those sorts, who received them. They were very popular. Lots of people, when they were visiting that area, that was a popular destination. And so it gave Blue and Gold a lot of leverage with these travel agents. And so what they did after they received this license, or they received this benefit from the National Park Service, they started leveraging this and requiring that any travel agents, any tour operators that they provided those Alcatraz tickets to must also use Blue and Gold for all of the other boating excursions. So they basically tied, if you are a travel agent, or it doesn't have to be an individual agent, it could be a website, it could be any number of different arrangements. But if they wanted tickets to Alcatraz, they had to agree that they would only use Blue and Gold cruise lines for all of the other stuff that they book. So if the people wanted to go do a tour of the bay, it had to be through Blue and Gold. If they wanted to, maybe do an ocean cruise, whatever it happened to be, if Blue and Gold offered the service, they had to use them if they wanted Alcatraz tickets. So they tied the ability to get the Alcatraz tickets to using them for all of these other things, which you can sort of see starts looking a lot more anti-competitive than just a pricing scheme. Okay, so, and several complaints were filed with the California Attorney General's office, and they had to stop doing this because of the anti-competitive nature. It violated antitrust laws, and they had to stop doing this. But you can see where tying, in one sense, and I'll give you a numerical example on the next slide, in one sense, tying can be used to sort of combine two products into almost a package. I won't use the term bundle because the next video is on bundling. But you can sort of link one of your products to another, which in one sense could be just price discrimination, but if taken too far, can definitely be predatory in terms of conduct, and can harm competition and potentially be found illegal. Okay, so let's use this as an example of what tying would look like. So let's suppose, and let's go back to our original example of a firm that provides a copy machine to a business. And let's assume that the firm's costs of the copy machine, so how much it costs them to maybe produce it, build it, whatever. We're going to make our example nice, even numbers. So let's just say that it costs them $1,000 to make the copy machine that they're going to provide to these offices. So there's two offices out there. There's a sort of a low use or lower use office, and then there's a power use office, an office that uses a lot more. So we've got these two demand curves, one for each of these types of offices. So here we've got quantity and price. So we've got demand curves for each of these, and they've been provided to us, quantity and price. We've got one demand curve that looks like this. This is D1. We've got another demand curve that looks like this. This is D2. When we were talking about price discrimination, we said that what the firm's trying to do when they price discriminate is capture consumer surplus from the consumer. Well, if we make an assumption, and our assumption that we're going to make is that outside of the cost of the copy machine, there's minimal to no costs that the business encounters for their copying services. Now, that's probably a little extreme because they have some paper costs, they've got some toner costs, those sorts of things. But those are going to be relatively small compared to the cost of the machine itself. So to make our math nice, we're just going to, for simplicity for now, just assume those don't cost anything out there. Okay, so if we went and we calculate consumer surplus, This type of customer has 5,000 in consumer surplus. This customer has 10,000 in consumer surplus. So if our firm is trying to decide what price do they want to charge, they're going to quickly come down to making a choice. They can either charge a price of 5,000 and sell to both of these businesses, in which case they'd make a total of $10,000 in revenue and spend $2,000 in costs associated with producing and supplying both machines, or they would sell to just the high value customer, the one that has 10,000 in consumer surplus, sell to them for 10,000, their entire consumer surplus, and they would only have costs of one printer in that case since they're only selling to one, and their profits would be 9,000. So if there's no tying, no price discrimination, anything like that, the company is going to quickly decide that they're going to charge 10,000. They're going to only sell to the high value client, and they're going to make $9,000 in profit. However, let's see what happens if we assume that they can tie. So let's suppose that they can tie, not ties, tie paper purchase going forward to purchase of machine. Okay, so the same company out there, they're going to tie, if you buy their machine, you have to get all of your paper supplies through them. This could be toner, it could be other things. Okay, and they're going to go through and they're going to charge. So let me see if I can easily erase some of this stuff. Okay, so so that it doesn't get confusing and too crowded, let's get rid of this. Okay, so what they're going to do is they're going to go through and they're going to charge a price of $25 for paper. Okay, and if they charge a price of $25 for paper, if you put in $25 into each of these, we get a quantity of 75 over here, and 25, we get a quantity of 150 over here. Okay, so it's not price discrimination. They're charging the same price for paper, but if you want to buy the copy machine, you have to buy paper from them going forward. So if they charge $25 for paper, the buyer on the left is going to buy 25 reams, cases, pages, whatever it happens to be, or buy 75 at a price of 25. So their expenditure here is going to be $18.75. On the right, at a cost of $25, they're going to buy 150. So their expenditure is $37.50. They're also going to have consumer surplus. So consumer surplus, like we talked about in the last module, is below demand and above price. So in this case, price is 25. So here my consumer surplus is $2,812.50. And over here, my consumer surplus is $5,625. Okay, so remember what we said before. We said if they're just charging one price and they're not tying anything, their profit's going to be $9,000. Well, now what happens if they charge $25 for paper supplies going forward, and then now their choice is, what do I want to charge for a printer? So let's see what happens. So let's go profit, tying equals. So I'm going to earn $18.75 from the demand on the left for their paper, plus I'm going to earn $3,750 from the demand on the right for their paper, plus, okay, again, we're not price discriminating, so we're going to charge both of them because we'll see what happens if we provide to both of them. We're going to charge both of them $2,812.50, and there's two of them, $2,812.50, minus the cost of producing the two printers, $2,000, And when you do that, you're going to get profit of 9,250, which is greater than we found before. So it's, again, it should bear some resemblance and seem a little bit similar to what we were talking about with two-part pricing. They're tying the future sale to the current purchase, and by doing that they overcharge for the future sale. So they overcharge for the paper and the toner and the printer, and or not the printer but all the supplies, and they charge less when you buy the printer because they know they're going to extract some of that money going forward. So a lot of times when you see these tying arrangements, you get a lower price to start with because that gets more people buying the good and getting their foot in the door. And then because they're obligated to buy from them going forward, they extract that money moving forward by overcharging for the supplies, whatever it happens to be. So that's really what tying's all about, is I'm producing two goods. I'm tying the sale of one good contingent on you buying the second good from me going forward. And because you're obligated to do that, I overcharge for the second good and I undercharge for the first good so that you're in the door and you're locked in, and then I recoup it moving forward. So some have argued that you can think of timeshares this way. You undercharge on the timeshare up front when they buy in, and then you have high maintenance fees going forward. But copy machines in that example works in a business setting all the time too.